It was just another ordinary day for Ava Simmons as she made her way across the sprawling campus of the Intergalactic Academy. The domed megastructure soared overhead, its iridescent shell refracting the light of the twin suns into dazzling rainbow hues. Eva still couldn't quite believe she was here, one of only a dozen humans selected to attend the most prestigious educational institution in the known universe. Around her, the walkways thronged with a diverse array of alien students from across the galaxy. A group of tall, willowy Eluthians glided by, their translucent skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns as they engaged in a heated debate. A stocky Krullian lumbered past, his craggy exoskeleton scraped and pitted from his home moon's harsh surface. There were dozens more species Ava couldn't even name yet. A riot of colors, forms, and features that still shocked and amazed her after a month at the academy. Shifting her book bag on her shoulder, Ava glanced at the holographic display embedded in her forearm. Her first class of the day started in 15 minutes, just enough time to grab a quick breakfast at the dining hall. She veered down a side path and picked up her pace. The dining hall was a cavernous space, its soaring ceiling a mosaic depicting the Academy's founding nearly a millennia ago. Hundreds of students clustered around tables, a cacophony of voices and clinking utensils filling the air. Ava wove her way through the crowd to the human section of the food offerings. "Morning, Ava," called out a friendly voice. Luck, a fellow human student, waved her over to where he sat with his breakfast. "Hey, Luck," Ava greeted as she collected a tray of food and joined him. "Ready for gravitational physics with Zeloth today. I heard there's going to be a practical demo." Luck groaned good-naturedly. "I still can't believe you find that stuff so interesting. Give me xenobotany any day. At least plants don't require tensor calculus to understand." Ava laughed as she dug into her eggs and toast. "What can I say? I like a challenge. Besides, applied physics is where all the cool tech comes from. Antigrav, FTL drives, inertia dampeners." All right, Luck waved his fork in surrender. "Nerd out all you want. Just don't be late to class, showing me up again." Eva glanced at her chrono display and blanched. She shoveled the last few bites of food in her mouth and grabbed her bag. "Catch you later," she called to Luck as she dashed out of the hall. 5 minutes later, Eva skidded to a halt outside the lecture hall, breathing hard. She composed herself and stepped through the arched doorway as casually as possible. The tired room was filled with students finding their seats. As one of only 3 humans in the advanced class, Ava attracted a few curious glances as she slid into a seat near the back. At the front of the hall stood the imposing figure of Professor Zeloth. A Zorlak from the high-gravity moons of Keth, Zeloth stood nearly 8 feet tall, his burly frame corded with dense muscle. His leathery hide was a rich amber hue, and a magnificent rack of horns curved back from his sloping brow. He commanded the room with an air of unquestionable authority. "Greetings, class," Zeloth began, his deep baritone easily reaching the back of the hall. "As you know, today we will be having a practical demonstration to accompany our study of extreme material density and its gravitational effects. I hope you have all reviewed the pre-reading materials. We will be working with a substance that requires the utmost caution and respect." A ripple of excited murmurs spread through the assembled students. Ava leaned forward eagerly in her seat, her heart accelerating with anticipation. Zeloth was known for his dramatic demonstrations, but he was not one for hyperbole. If he said they were working with something special, Eva couldn't wait to see it. The lights in the hall dimmed as Zeloth tapped a control on his podium. In the center of the demonstration floor, a circular panel arised open. From beneath the polished floor, A large containment cylinder rose into view, the reinforced neutron steel of its shell glinting under the spotlights. Within this shielded containment, we have a block composed of pure neutronium, Xyloth intoned gravely. I'm sure I do not need to remind you of this material's properties. Formed in the hearts of stellar remnants, a cube of neutronium, a mere meter on each side, would have a mass equal to a Terran mountain. Ava felt her mouth go dry as she gazed at the cylinder. Neutronium. She had read about the incredible substance, but never dreamed she would see it in person. The exotic material was the holy grail of gravitational research, its density and gravitational effects so extreme that it defied conventional physics. Xyloth made a gesture, and the containment cylinder split open, its shielded halves retracting to reveal a perfect cube of utter blackness at its heart, so dark it seemed to swallow the light around it. It sat quiescent on a raised dais, yet Ava could almost feel the immense gravitational field it exerted, like a ponderous weight pressing against her mind. The block we have here is significantly smaller than a cubic meter, Xyloth continued. Yet it still boasts a mass greater than any material you have encountered before. To even hold it in a stable position required the most advanced anti-gravitic technologies we possess. As if on cue, a shimmering field enveloped the black cube, a barely perceptible distortion in the air. Slowly, ponderously, the cube began to rise from its dais, until it hovered a meter above the floor. Ava watched in awe, trying to wrap her mind around the incredible forces at play. Today, Xyloth announced, his amber eyes sweeping the captivated audience, we will be conducting an experiment to demonstrate the principles of gravitational lensing and extreme mass. You will have the opportunity to observe firsthand the effects of neutronium's immense density. The professor made another gesture, and a holographic control interface coalesced above the floating cube. Ava watched as he began manipulating the glowing fields, fingers dancing through the air as he adjusted the containment fields and positioned sensor arrays. I will require a student volunteer for the first part of our demonstration, Xyloth said. Who would like to assist me in collecting the initial observations? Dozens of limbs shot up across the auditorium. Tentacles, appendages, and in Ava's case, a simple 5-fingered hand. She knew it was a long shot, with so many eager volunteers. But she had dreamed of working with neutronium since she first learned of its existence. This was the chance of a lifetime. To her shock and delight, Xyloth's amber gaze fell upon her, and he gestured for her to approach. Ava rose on shaky legs, hardly believing her luck, and made her way down the steps to the demonstration floor. She could feel the eyes of the entire class upon her, the human girl selected for this prestigious task. Ava Simmons, Xyloth greeted her as she reached the floor. I have noted your exceptional performance in this course. I trust you will conduct yourself with the precision and care this experiment requires. Yes, Professor, Ava said, hoped her voice didn't betray her nerves. I'm honored to assist. Xyloth nodded and directed her to a control panel beside the floating cube. Up close, the neutronium exerted an almost palpable aura, a weighty presence that pressed upon Ava's consciousness. She could hardly believe she was standing mere meters from a substance that shouldn't exist outside the heart of a neutron star. Under Xyloth's direction, Ava began the delicate process of calibrating the sensors and aligning the containment fields. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls, years of training and simulation guiding her through the complex algorithms and adjustments. As she worked, Ava couldn't help but marvel at the incredible opportunity she had been given. Here she was, a human student, working alongside the most brilliant minds in the galaxy on the most extraordinary material in the universe. It was moments like these that reminded Ava why she had worked so hard to earn her place at the Intergalactic Academy. Finally, the preparations were complete. Zilloth made a final check of the readings, his amber eyes focused as he scanned the glowing displays. He gave a nod of satisfaction and turned to address the class. "We are ready to begin," he announced. "Observe closely, for what you are about to witness has never been attempted in a classroom setting before. Ms. Simmons, you may initiate the gravitational lensing sequence. Now." Ava took a deep breath and activated the control sequence with a decisive gesture. The containment field around the neutronium cube shimmered and shifted, its polychromatic shine taking on a distinct warp. Slowly, ponderously, beams of pure energy emerged from emitters arranged around the cube, lancing into the heart of the black substance. The effect was immediate and astonishing. As the beams struck the neutronium, they bent and curved, their paths distorted by the immense gravitational pull of the material. Arcs of iridescent light whirled around the cube, painting the air with shimmering patterns that defied the eye. It was as if a miniature galaxy had been born in the heart of the lecture hall, a swirling dance of gravity and energy unlike anything Ava had ever witnessed. Zerloff was talking, his deep baritone guiding the students through the principles at work, but Ava barely heard him. Her entire being was focused on the marvel before her, the impossible display of physics made real. She had known, intellectually, the effects neutronium would have on energy and space-time. But to see it unfold before her eyes was a revelation, a paradigm-shifting moment that reminded Ava of the incredible wonders the universe held. As the demonstration continued, Ava found herself wondering about the implications of such a material. The sheer power contained within that small cube was staggering, a power that could reshape worlds, propel starships to unimaginable velocities, even manipulate the very fabric of the universe itself. What could the brilliant minds at the Academy achieve with such a substance at their command? What new frontiers could they explore? What great endeavors could they undertake? For a moment, Ava felt a swell of pride that she, a human, was here to witness this pivotal moment. That her species, so new to the galactic stage, was taking its place among these towering intellects and unfathomable technologies. That she could be a part of something so much greater than herself, a grand endeavor to unravel the mysteries of the cosmos and push the boundaries of what was possible. As the demonstration drew to a close and the containment fields restabilized, Ava found herself longing for more. More knowledge, more discovery, more chances to be a part of such awe-inspiring work. She knew with a sudden clarity that this was what she was meant to do. To learn and grow and push herself to the very limits of her abilities in pursuit of a greater understanding of the incredible universe they inhabited. With a final shimmer, the gravitational lensing effect dissipated, and the neutronium cube sank back onto its days. The hall was silent for a long moment, every student absorbing the gravity of what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly at first, but with growing enthusiasm, applause began to ripple through the auditorium. Ava found herself clapping along with the rest. A grin of pure wonder stretched across her face. Professor Zaloth stepped forward, his amber eyes glinting with satisfaction as he surveyed the class. "Thank you, Miss Simmons, for your assistance," he said, his deep voice cutting through the din. "And thank you all for your attention. I hope this demonstration has given you a new appreciation for the incredible forces at work in our universe and the power of the knowledge we pursue here at the Academy." As the class began to disperse, chattering excitedly amongst themselves, Eva found herself lingering on the demonstration floor. She gazed at the now quiescent neutronium cube, her mind still reeling with the implications of what she had just been a part of. It was hard to believe that just an hour ago she had thought of this as just another ordinary day. But as she stood there, amid the fading glow of something extraordinary, Ava realized that at the Intergalactic Academy there was no such thing as an ordinary day. Every moment held the potential for wonder, for discovery, for pushing the boundaries of the possible. And as she finally turned to make her way out of the lecture hall, Ava couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement for what the future held, for the extraordinary days to come, and the chance to be a part of something truly amazing. It was just another day at the Intergalactic Academy, but Ava knew, now more than ever, that she wouldn't trade it for anything in the universe. In the days following the neutronium demonstration, Ava found herself the subject of newfound attention and respect from her classmates. Word had spread quickly about her role in assisting Professor Zerloth, and everywhere she went, she was met with curious stares and whispered conversations. It was a strange feeling for Ava, who had always considered herself just another student, albeit one from a species still finding its place in the galactic community. She wasn't used to being singled out or admired, and the sudden change left her feeling both flattered and mildly uncomfortable. But as the initial buzz began to die down, life at the academy settled back into its usual rhythm. Ava threw herself into her studies with renewed vigor, determined to prove that her selection as Zerloth's assistant was more than just a fluke. She spent long hours in the lab, poring over simulations and calculations, pushing herself to master the complex principles of gravitational physics. It was during one of these late-night study sessions that Ava received a message on her comlink. She was surprised to see Professor Zerloth's name on the display, and even more surprised by the content of his message. "Ms. Simmons," the message read, "your performance during the neutronium demonstration showed great promise. I believe you have the potential to be an exceptional student of gravitational physics. I would like to discuss an opportunity for advanced study with you. Please come to my office at your earliest convenience." Ava read and reread the message, hardly believing her eyes. An opportunity for advanced study with Professor Zerloth himself? It was an honor she had never even dared to dream of. The next day, Ava found herself standing outside Zerloth's office, her heart hammering in her chest as she signaled her presence. The door slid open, and she stepped inside, taking in the spacious room with its shelves of data crystals and holographic displays. Professor Zerloth sat behind a large curved desk, his amber eyes fixed on a glowing readout. He looked up as Ava entered and gestured for her to take a seat. "Ms. Simmons," he said without preamble, "I'll get straight to the point. Your work shows great potential, and I believe you have the capability to tackle advanced concepts in gravitational physics. I am putting together a select group of students to work on a cutting-edge research project, and I would like you to be a part of it." Ava's eyes widened as she processed Zerloth's words. A research project with a select group of students handpicked by Zerloth himself. It was an incredible opportunity, one that could shape the course of her entire academic career. I would be honored, Professor," Ava managed to say, trying to keep her voice steady. "What would this project entail?" Zerloth leaned back in his chair, his amber eyes glinting. "We will be continuing our work with neutronium," he said, "but on a much larger scale. The Academy has secured a significant quantity of the material, and we will be using it to test the limits of gravitational manipulation. The potential applications are vast, from advanced propulsion systems to the manipulation of space-time itself." Ava felt a thrill of excitement at the professor's words. To work with neutronium, to explore the very boundaries of physics. It was the kind of opportunity she had dreamed of when she first set her sights on the Intergalactic Academy. "I'm in," she said, a grin spreading across her face. "When do we start?" Zilloth's answering smile was brief but genuine. "We will begin immediately," he said. "I will introduce you to the rest of the team, and we will commence work on the initial phase of the project. But be warned, Miss Simmons, this will be unlike anything you have encountered in your studies thus far. The challenges we face will test the limits of your intellect and resolve." Ava met the professor's gaze, her own eyes shining with determination. "I'm ready," she said simply. And with that, Eva found herself plunged into a world of cutting-edge research and unimaginable possibilities. The team Zilloth had assembled was small but brilliant, each member a hand-picked prodigy in their field. Ava was the only human among them, a fact that only served to fuel her determination to prove herself. The work was challenging, even grueling at times. The properties of neutronium pushed the boundaries of conventional physics, and the team spent long hours grappling with equations and simulations that seemed to defy understanding. But slowly, painstakingly, they began to make progress, unlocking the secrets of the incredible material they worked with. It was during one of these marathon research sessions that Professor Zilloth made an announcement that would change the course of the project, and Ava's life forever. "We have made significant strides in our understanding of neutronium's properties," he said, his deep voice ringing through the lab. "But to truly push the boundaries of what is possible, we must conduct a practical test. An experiment that will demonstrate the full extent of our gravitational control." The team exchanged glances, a ripple of excitement and apprehension running through the room. A practical test, with actual neutronium. It was a daunting prospect, but one filled with incredible potential. Zilloth activated a holographic display, a schematic of the proposed experiment spinning into view. "We will be attempting to manipulate a significant mass of neutronium," he said, "using the principles of gravitational lensing and field manipulation we have developed. If successful, this experiment could pave the way for breakthroughs in fields ranging from energy production to space travel." Ava leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the glowing schematic. The scale of the proposed experiment was staggering. The neutronium mass Zilloth was proposing to manipulate was orders of magnitude larger than anything they had worked with before. The energy requirements alone were immense, and the potential risks. But as she studied the display, a thought began to take shape in Ava's mind. A wild, impossible idea that went against everything she had been taught about the limitations of physical manipulation. "Professor," she said slowly, hardly believing the words as she spoke them, "what if we didn't use a machine to manipulate the neutronium? What if we used a person?" The room fell silent, every eye turning to stare at Ava in shock. The idea was preposterous, unthinkable. The gravitational forces involved in manipulating such a mass would crush any living being instantly. It was a fundamental law of the universe, an immutable fact. But Ava pressed on, the idea taking hold in her mind with a fierce intensity. "Hear me out," she said, her voice growing more confident as she spoke. "We've been approaching this problem from a purely technological standpoint. But what if the key lies not in machines, but in the power of the living mind?" She gestured to the schematic, her eyes shining with a fierce light. "We know that consciousness, the spark of life itself, has properties we still don't fully understand. What if we could harness that power, use it to manipulate the very fabric of the universe in ways our machines cannot?" The team was silent, stunned by the audacity of Ava's proposal. But slowly, incredibly, Professor Zilloth began to nod, his amber eyes gleaming with a new light. "It's a bold idea, Miss Simmons," he said, his voice thoughtful. "Some would say an impossible one. The risks involved would be immense, the potential consequences catastrophic. But," he paused, his gaze sweeping the room. If we could make it work, the implications would be staggering. A true revolution in our understanding of the universe and our place within it. He turned to face Ava directly, his expression grave. You understand the risks involved. The likelihood that any attempt to manipulate neutronium with a living mind would result in instantaneous death. Ava met his gaze unflinchingly, her resolve unwavering. I understand, she said quietly. But I also know that every great leap in our understanding has come with risk. If we aren't willing to push the boundaries, to test the limits of what's possible, then what are we doing here? Zeloth held her gaze for a long moment, a silent communication passing between them. Then, slowly, he nodded. Very well, he said, his voice ringing with a new authority. We will proceed with the experiment as planned, but with one critical change. He turned to face the room, his eyes blazing. I will be the one to attempt the manipulation. A gasp ran through the team, shock and disbelief written on every face. For a professor, a figure of immense authority and respect, to volunteer for such a dangerous, untested procedure, it was unheard of. But Zeloth held up a hand, quelling the protests before they could begin. I cannot ask any of you to take on a risk I am not willing to bear myself, he said simply. If we are to attempt this, it will be on my shoulders and mine alone. He turned to Ava, his expression softening. But I will need your help, Miss Simmons. Your unique perspective and innovative thinking have brought us to this point. I want you by my side as we take this leap into the unknown. Ava felt a swell of emotion, a mix of pride, fear, and exhilaration. She knew the risks, knew the odds were stacked against them. But she also knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that this was a moment that would define the course of history. A chance to be a part of something truly extraordinary. I'm with you, Professor, she said, her voice ringing with conviction. Let's make the impossible possible. And with those words, the course was set. The team threw themselves into preparations with a fever-pitch intensity, driven by the knowledge that they were on the cusp of something world-changing. Eva worked side by side with Professor Zeloth, refining the theoretical models, running countless simulations, pushing their understanding to the very brink. And finally the day arrived. The neutronium mass, a perfect sphere of impossible density, hung suspended in the center of the lab, its containment fields shimmering with barely restrained power. Professor Zeloth stood before it, his amber eyes gleaming with a fierce light, his body encased in a specialized suit bristling with sensors and reinforcement. Ava stood at the control console, her fingers flying over the holographic interface as she made final adjustments and calibrations. Her heart was pounding, her every nerve alight with a heady mix of fear and exhilaration. This was it, the moment of truth, the point where the impossible became possible, where the boundaries of the universe itself were redefined. Ava met Professor Zeloth's gaze across the pulsing containment field, a silent communication passing between them. A moment of understanding, of shared resolve in the face of the unknown. Then, with a deep breath and a nod of readiness, Ava initiated the sequence. The containment fields flared, pulsing with an intense, blinding light. The neutronium sphere shimmered, its surface rippling with distortions as the gravitational forces around it warped and twisted. And at the center of it all, Professor Zeloth stood tall, his eyes closed in concentration, his mind reaching out to touch the fabric of the universe itself. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, nothing happened. The neutronium hung motionless, the lab's silence save for the hum of straining equipment. Then, impossibly, the sphere began to move. Slowly at first, then with gathering speed, it lifted from its cradle, hovering in the air as if suspended by an invisible hand. Ava watched in awe, hardly daring to breathe, as Zilloth manipulated the immense mass with nothing more than the power of his mind. It was a sight beyond comprehension, a display of mental prowess and gravitational manipulation that defied every known law of physics. The neutronium sphere danced and spun, responding to Zilloth's every thought with a fluidity and grace that seemed almost alive. And at the center of it all, Zilloth himself remained perfectly still, his face a mask of intense concentration, his mind locked in a cosmic dance with the very fabric of reality. For a timeless moment, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath, witnessing a feat that should not have been possible. A human mind, harnessing the power of the cosmos, reshaping the very foundations of existence. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The neutronium sphere settled gently back into its cradle, the containment fields stabilizing with a soft hum. Professor Zilloth opened his eyes, a look of profound wonder and exhaustion etched across his face. For a long moment, the lab was silent, every member of the team struggling to process what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, a cheer began to build, rising in volume and intensity until it was a roar of triumph and awe. They had done it. They had achieved the impossible, harnessed the power of the mind to manipulate the very building blocks of the universe. It was a moment that would be remembered for centuries, a turning point in the history of galactic civilization. And at the center of it all, Ava stood tall, tears of joy and disbelief streaming down her face. She had been a part of something extraordinary, a feat that would change the course of history. She had pushed the boundaries of the possible and come out the other side, forever changed by the experience. In the wake of the groundbreaking neutronium experiment, Ava found herself at the center of a whirlwind of attention and acclaim. News of the feat spread like wildfire through the academy and beyond, and soon the eyes of the entire galactic scientific community were fixed on the unassuming human girl who had helped make the impossible possible. Overnight, Ava became a celebrity, her name spoken with awe and reverence in the halls of the academy and beyond. She was inundated with requests for interviews, invitations to speak at prestigious conferences, offers to collaborate on cutting-edge research projects. It was overwhelming, to say the least. Ava had never sought the spotlight, had always been content to work hard and let her achievements speak for themselves. But now she found herself thrust into a role she had never anticipated, a symbol of human potential, a living embodiment of the idea that the limits of the possible were meant to be pushed. Despite the sudden fame and attention, Ava remained focused on her work, determined to build on the breakthrough she and Professor Zilloth had achieved. She threw herself into her studies with renewed vigor, pushing herself to the limits of her endurance as she sought to unravel the secrets of the universe. But even as she lost herself in the joy of discovery and the thrill of pushing boundaries, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The neutronium experiment had shown her a glimpse of the true extent of human potential, but it had been Professor Zilloth, not her, who had actually manipulated the immense mass with his mind. Ava knew, deep down, that she was capable of so much more, that the strength and resilience that had carried her this far were just the tip of the iceberg, a hint of the true power that lay dormant within her. She began to push herself even harder, not just academically but physically as well. She spent long hours in the academy's training facilities, pushing her body to its limits as she sought to unlock the full extent of her human strength and endurance. At first, her efforts were met with puzzlement and even a bit of amusement from her alien classmates. The idea of deliberately subjecting oneself to physical strain and discomfort was a foreign concept to many of them, who relied on technology or innate biological advantages to navigate the challenges of the universe. But as Eva's strength and stamina began to grow, as she started to shatter records and push past the supposed limits of human capability, the amusement turned to awe and even a hint of fear. Here was a human, a member of a species still new to the galactic stage, displaying a level of raw physical power and determination that rivaled even the most advanced alien races. It was a revelation, a paradigm shift that challenged long-held assumptions about the hierarchy of the cosmos. Professor Zoloth watched Ava's progress with a mixture of pride and fascination. He had always known that humans possessed a unique resilience and adaptability, but seeing it firsthand in Ava was a revelation. He began to work with her directly, guiding her in advanced techniques of mental focus and physical discipline. Together, they pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible, combining cutting-edge science with the raw power of the human spirit. And slowly but surely, Eva began to realize the true extent of her potential. She found herself capable of feats she had never dreamed possible. Lifting masses that would have crushed an ordinary human, enduring gravitational forces that would have reduced most beings to atoms. She became a living testament to the idea that the human mind and body, when pushed to their limits and beyond, were capable of truly extraordinary things. That the supposed weaknesses and limitations of her species were in fact their greatest strengths, the key to unlocking a potential that had lain dormant for eons. As her powers grew, so too did the whispers and rumors surrounding her. Some hailed her as a savior, a champion of the human race who would lead them to a new golden age of discovery and achievement. Others feared her as a threat, a being of unknowable power who could upset the delicate balance of the galactic order. But Ava paid the rumors no heed. She was focused on one thing and one thing only, pushing herself to be the best she could be, to make the most of the incredible gift she had been given. And so she trained and studied, lost herself in the joy of discovery and the thrill of breaking barriers. She became a shining beacon of human potential, a living embodiment of the idea that anything was possible if you had the will and the determination to make it so. Years passed, and Ava's legend only grew. She became known throughout the galaxy as a pioneer, a trailblazer who had single-handedly redefined what it meant to be human. But for all her fame and accomplishments, Ava never lost sight of what truly mattered. The unbreakable bonds of friendship and camaraderie she had forged at the Academy, the sense of purpose and destiny that drove her ever forward. And so it was that when the call came, a distress signal from a far-off system, a plea for help from a civilization on the brink of annihilation, Ava didn't hesitate. She gathered her team, her friends and colleagues who had been with her through every trial and triumph, and set out to face the greatest challenge of her life. It was a mission fraught with danger and uncertainty, a journey into the unknown from which there might be no return. But Eva knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that this was what she had been born to do. That all her struggles and sacrifices, all the pain and sweat and tears, had been leading her to this moment. As she stood on the bridge of the ship, watching the stars streak past in a blur of light and motion, Eva felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was ready for whatever lay ahead, ready to face any challenge and overcome any obstacle. For she was human, a member of a species that had clawed its way up from the dirt and the darkness to take its place among the stars. And now, with the power of her mind and the strength of her spirit, she would show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. The future was waiting, a vast and endless expanse of possibility stretching out before her. And Eva was ready to meet it head-on, to forge a new destiny for herself and her people. For she was Ava Simmons, the girl who had unleashed the hidden strength of humanity, and she was just getting started. As the ship plunged into the swirling vortex of hyperspace Ava closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the thrum of the engines vibrating through her bones. She thought back to that fateful day in Professor Zoloth's lab, the moment when she had first glimpsed the true extent of her potential. She had come so far since then, had grown and changed in ways she never could have imagined. But at her core, she was still the same girl who had looked upon the neutronium sphere and seen not an impossible challenge, but an opportunity to push beyond the boundaries of the known. That spirit, that unquenchable thirst for knowledge and discovery, had carried her through every trial and tribulation. It had given her the strength to keep going when all seemed lost, to find a way forward no matter how dark the path might seem. And now, as she embarked on the greatest adventure of her life, Ava knew that same spirit would guide her through whatever lay ahead. She had faith in herself, in her team, in the indomitable power of the human will. Together, they would face the unknown and emerge triumphant, would push back the boundaries of the possible, and forge a new future for all of galactic civilization. They would show the universe what humanity was made of, would prove once and for all that the supposed weaknesses of their species were in fact their greatest strengths. As the vortex of hyperspace swirled around her, Ava felt a smile tug at the corners of her lips. The path ahead was uncertain, the challenges unknown. But one thing she knew for sure: whatever awaited her at the end of this journey, she would face it with her head held high and her spirit unbroken. For she was human, and she would never back down from a fight. The galaxy had better be ready, because Eva Simmons was coming. And she was bringing the full might of humanity with her. As Ava and her team hurtled through the swirling vortex of hyperspace, the effects of their groundbreaking achievement were already beginning to ripple across the galaxy. News of the incredible feat achieved by a human, a species many had previously dismissed as primitive and insignificant, spread like wildfire through the vast network of interstellar communication. At first, the reactions were ones of shock and disbelief. The idea that a human could manipulate a substance as exotic and dangerous as neutronium with nothing but the power of their mind was beyond comprehension for most. Many dismissed the reports as exaggerated rumors or outright fabrications, unable or unwilling to believe that a species so young and untested could have achieved such a thing. But as more details emerged, as the incontrovertible evidence of Ava's accomplishment spread through scientific circles and beyond, the tone began to shift. Disbelief gave way to awe, then to a dawning realization that humanity was far more than it had seemed. In the great halls of learning across the galaxy, scholars and researchers who had previously dismissed human science as primitive and irrelevant now scrambled to incorporate this new knowledge into their understanding of the universe. They pored over the data from the neutronium experiment, seeking to unravel the secrets behind Ava's incredible feat. In the corridors of power, galactic leaders who had once seen humanity as a minor player on the cosmic stage now looked upon them with new eyes. They saw not a fledgling species struggling to find its place, but a potential ally, or rival, with capabilities they were only beginning to understand. And among the people of countless worlds, whispers began to spread of the incredible potential that lay dormant within the human species. Some spoke of them as saviors, beings of unknowable power who could lead the galaxy into a new era of peace and prosperity. Others saw them as a threat, a wild card that could upset the delicate balance of galactic power. But while the galaxy grappled with the implications of humanity's newfound status, Ava and her team raced toward their destination, their minds focused on the crisis at hand. They had received the distress call just days before, a desperate plea from a civilization on the brink of annihilation, begging for aid from anyone who could hear. The details were sparse, the nature of the threat unknown, but Ava hadn't hesitated. She knew, with a bone-deep certainty that this was what she had been training for all these years. That all the sweat and tears, all the long hours spent pushing herself to the limits of human endurance, had been leading her to this moment. As the ship dropped out of hyperspace and the swirling lights of the vortex gave way to the starry expanse of normal space, Ava felt a thrill of exhilaration mixed with trepidation. Somewhere ahead lay the source of the distress call, the civilization crying out for salvation. And she would answer that call, would do whatever it took to save them from whatever fate awaited. But even as she steeled herself for the challenges ahead, Eva couldn't help but marvel at the strange twists of fate that had brought her to this moment. Just a few short years ago, she had been a wide-eyed newcomer to the Intergalactic Academy, struggling to find her place among the alien wonders and exotic technologies. Now she was a legend, a symbol of humanity's unbounded potential. She had the power to reshape the very fabric of the universe, to stand toe-to-toe with the most advanced beings in the galaxy. And she had done it not through some innate biological advantage or advanced technology, but through the sheer force of human will and determination. As the ship slipped into orbit around the beleaguered planet, Ava took a moment to gather her thoughts. She knew that the challenges ahead would test her like never before, would push her to the very limits of her abilities. But she also knew that she was ready, that she had the strength and the resolve to face whatever lay ahead. For she was human, a member of a species that had clawed its way up from the primordial muck to take its place among the stars. And now, with the power of her mind and the courage of her heart, she would show the galaxy what humanity could do. As she stepped onto the bridge, her team arrayed around her, Ava felt a sense of calm settle over her. This was her destiny, the role she had been born to play. And she would not falter, would not back down in the face of even the greatest adversity. For she was Ava Simmons, the girl who had unlocked the hidden potential of her species. And she was here to save the day, to prove once and for all that humanity belonged among the stars. The planet grew larger in the view screen, a world in crisis crying out for a savior. And Eva would answer that call, would stand against the darkness and the chaos and say, "No more." For she was human, and she would never give up, never surrender. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant, was about to witness the full power and potential of a species that refused to be defined by its limitations. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, Ava took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. This was the moment she had been training for, the ultimate test of everything she had learned and achieved. But she was ready to face the unknown, to grapple with the impossible, to do whatever it took to save the day. She had the strength of her convictions, the power of her mind, and the unbreakable bonds of her team. Together, they would face this challenge and emerge victorious. They would show the galaxy what humanity was made of, would prove that the supposed weaknesses of their species were in fact their greatest strengths. As the ship touched down and the hatch began to open, Eva squared her shoulders and stepped forward, ready to face her destiny. The future was uncertain, the path ahead fraught with danger and doubt. But one thing was clear: Ava Simmons had arrived, and she was bringing the full might of humanity with her. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was just the way she liked it. As Ava stepped out onto the alien soil, she was immediately struck by the sense of wrongness that pervaded the atmosphere. The sky above was a sickly greenish grey, the air thick and oppressive with an acrid stench that made her eyes water and her throat burn. Around her, the landscape was a blasted wasteland, a twisted mockery of the lush and vibrant world this had once been. The ground was scorched and cracked, littered with the wreckage of shattered buildings and the twisted remains of alien vegetation. And everywhere there was an overwhelming sense of despair, a palpable aura of hopelessness that hung over the planet like a shroud. It was as if the very life had been drained from this world, leaving behind only a husk of what it had once been. But even in the midst of this desolation, Eva could sense a flicker of hope, a stubborn spark of determination that refused to be extinguished. It was there in the eyes of the ragged survivors who emerged from the ruins to greet them, in the set of their shoulders and the firmness of their jaws. These were a people who had been pushed to the brink, who had seen their world crumble around them. But they had not given up, had not surrendered to the despair that threatened to engulf them. They had called out for help, had dared to hope that someone would answer their plea. And now, as they looked upon Ava and her team, there was a glimmer of something in their eyes, a fragile, tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, salvation had arrived. Ava felt the weight of that hope settling on her shoulders, felt the magnitude of the responsibility she had taken on. These people were counting on her, were placing their lives and their future in her hands. But she would not let them down. She had not come all this way, had not pushed herself beyond the limits of human endurance to fail now. She would find a way to save this world, to bring hope and healing to a people who had lost everything. As she stepped forward to greet the survivors, Eva felt a sense of purpose settling over her like a mantle. This was her calling, the task she had been born to fulfill. And she would not rest until it was done, until this world was restored to its former glory, and its people could once again look to the future with hope and joy. For she was Ava Simmons, the girl who had unlocked the hidden potential of her species. And she was here to make a difference, to prove that humanity had a vital role to play in the grand tapestry of the cosmos. The challenges ahead would be great, the obstacles seemingly insurmountable. But Ava had faced impossible odds before and emerged triumphant. And she would do so again, would call upon every ounce of strength and determination she possessed to see this mission through to the end. For the sake of the people of this world, for the sake of the galaxy that looked to her as a symbol of hope and possibility, she would not fail. She would stand against the darkness and the chaos, would be the light that guided the way forward. And in doing so, she would show the universe what humanity was truly capable of, would forge a new future in which her species took its rightful place among the stars. So, as she looked out over the blasted landscape, as she felt the weight of countless lives resting on her shoulders, Ava took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. She was Ava Simmons, the girl who would save the galaxy, and she was just getting started. As Ava and her team worked tirelessly to unravel the mystery of the planet's devastation and find a way to save its people, the ripple effects of her actions continued to spread across the galaxy. The news of a human-led rescue mission on a far-flung world, coming so soon after the revelations of Ava's unprecedented achievements, sent shockwaves through the galactic community. On worlds across the galaxy, people of all species and walks of life found themselves drawn to the unfolding story of the human girl who had defied all expectations. They gathered around news feeds and communication terminals, hanging on every scrap of information that trickled in from the distant planet. And as they watched and waited, a strange thing began to happen. The old prejudices and preconceptions that had long divided the galaxy began to break down, to crumble in the face of this newfound sense of possibility. And on Earth itself, the news of Eva's exploits had an even more profound impact. For generations, humanity had looked to the stars with a sense of longing and uncertainty, questioning their place in the vast tapestry of the cosmos. But now, with one of their own standing tall among the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, they found a new sense of pride and purpose. Across the planet, people of all nations and cultures celebrated Ava as a hero, a shining example of the best that humanity had to offer. Her name became a rallying cry, a symbol of the boundless potential that lay within each and every human being. And in the halls of power, leaders who had once been content to keep their eyes fixed on terrestrial concerns now looked to the stars with a new sense of ambition. They saw in Ava's achievements a glimpse of a future in which humanity took its rightful place on the galactic stage, in which they stood shoulder to shoulder with the most advanced species in the universe. Funds were poured into scientific research and space exploration. Diplomatic outreach to alien civilizations was stepped up, and a new generation of brilliant minds was inspired to follow in Ava's footsteps and push the boundaries of what was possible. And so, even as Eva and her team fought to save a world on the brink of collapse, the seeds of a new era were being sown. An era in which humanity would no longer be content to watch from the sidelines, but would instead take an active and vital role in shaping the future of the galaxy. Back on the beleaguered planet, Ava and her team were locked in a desperate race against time. They had discovered the source of the world's woes, a malevolent alien intelligence that had infected the planet's core, twisting and corrupting everything it touched. To defeat this enemy and restore the planet to health would require every ounce of skill and determination they possessed. They would need to delve deep into the mysteries of alien technology and biology to push the boundaries of scientific understanding and find a way to neutralize the malevolent entity. But even in the midst of this titanic struggle, Eva found moments of connection and humanity that gave her strength. She forged deep bonds with the alien survivors she had come to save, learning their stories and their dreams, sharing in their joys and their sorrows. And in those moments, she came to understand the true power of the human spirit, not as a source of brute strength or technological might, but as a wellspring of compassion, empathy, and unconquerable will. For it was those qualities, more than any physical or mental prowess, that had brought her to this place and this moment. It was the unbreakable bonds of love and loyalty, the refusal to give up in the face of even the darkest adversity, that had made her a hero to the galaxy. And as she stood on the brink of her greatest challenge yet, Ava drew strength from that realization. She knew that whatever lay ahead, whatever obstacles and enemies she might face, she would not be facing them alone. She had her team, her friends and comrades who had been with her through every trial and triumph. She had the hopes and dreams of a galaxy that looked to her as a beacon of possibility and promise. And most of all, she had the unbreakable spirit of humanity itself, the courage and compassion, the resilience and resolve that had carried her species from the savannas of Africa to the stars themselves. With those forces at her back, Ava knew that there was nothing she could not accomplish, no foe she could not overcome. She would save this world and its people, would strike a blow against the darkness that threatened to engulf the galaxy. And in doing so, she would light the way for a new era of unity and discovery, a future in which humanity and all the species of the galaxy stood together as one. As the final battle loomed, as the fate of a world and a galaxy hung in the balance, Ava felt a sense of calm settle over her. This was her destiny, the role she had been born to play. And play it she would, with every fibre of her being. For she was Ava Simmons, the girl who had unlocked the hidden potential of her species. And she would not rest until that potential was fulfilled, until humanity had taken its place among the stars and forged a new future for all the peoples of the galaxy. The road ahead would be long and hard, the challenges and sacrifices many, but Ava was ready, armed with the strength of her convictions and the power of the human spirit. She would face the coming storm and emerge victorious, would be the beacon of hope and the bringer of change that the galaxy so desperately needed. And in the end, when the dust had settled and the day was won, she would look back on this moment as the turning point, the instant when everything changed. For this was the dawn of a new era, a time of wonder and possibility in which the old barriers between species and civilizations would crumble, and a new galactic order would rise from the ashes of the old. And at the center of it all, standing tall and proud, would be the figure of Ava Simmons, the human girl who had dared to dream of a better future, and who had the courage and the will to make that dream a reality. As the sun rose over the devastated landscape, casting its light on a world reborn, Ava took a moment to reflect on all that had happened, and all that was yet to come. She thought of the friends she had made and the battles she had fought, of the triumphs and the tragedies that had shaped her journey to this point. And she thought of the future that lay ahead, the endless possibilities and the boundless potential that awaited her and all the peoples of the galaxy. It was a future filled with hope and promise, a future in which the old divisions and hatreds would give way to a new spirit of unity and cooperation. And it was a future that Eva would help to build, brick by brick and star by star. For she was a builder and a dreamer, a warrior and a healer. She was Ava Simmons, the girl who had changed the galaxy, and she was just getting started. As the first rays of the new dawn bathed the planet in their warmth and light, Ava took a deep breath and turned to face the future, ready for whatever lay ahead. She had come so far and accomplished so much, but she knew that her journey was far from over. There were new worlds to explore, new challenges to conquer, new friends to make, and new enemies to face. But she would face them all with the same courage and determination that had brought her to this moment, the same unbreakable spirit that had made her a hero to the galaxy. For she was human, and she would never back down from a fight. She would stand tall in the face of any adversity, would be the light that guided the way through the darkest of times. And she would do it all with the love and support of the friends and allies she had gathered along the way, the beings from countless worlds and cultures who had been inspired by her example and joined her cause. Together, they would forge a new future for the galaxy, a future in which every species had a voice and every civilization had a place. They would stand against the forces of darkness and chaos, would be the guardians and protectors of all that was good and right in the universe. And at the center of it all would be Ava, the girl who had started it all, the human who had shown the galaxy what her species was truly capable of. As she looked out over the horizon, to the stars that beckoned and the wonders that awaited, Eva felt a sense of incredible excitement and anticipation washing over her. This was just the beginning, the first step on a journey that would take her to the farthest reaches of the galaxy and beyond. And she could not wait to see where that journey would take her next. For she was Ava Simmons, the girl who had unlocked the hidden potential of humanity, and she was ready to take on the universe, one adventure at a time. The future was bright, and it was hers for the taking, and Eva would seize it with both hands, would make the most of every moment and every opportunity. For she was human, and she had the power to change the galaxy, and that was exactly what she intended to do. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, and the people of the planet began to stir, Eva squared her shoulders and stepped forward, ready to embrace her destiny. The universe was waiting, and she could not wait to explore it. For in the end, that was what being human was all about. The endless curiosity, the boundless imagination, the unstoppable drive to discover and understand and grow. And Eva embodied those qualities more than anyone, the shining exemplar of all that humanity could be and all that they could achieve. So she would keep pushing forward, keep reaching for the stars, keep daring to dream of a better tomorrow. And she would inspire others to do the same, to follow in her footsteps and blaze their own trails across the galaxy. For she was Ava Simmons, the girl who had changed everything, and her story was far from over. It was a new dawn, a new beginning, a new era of possibility and potential, and Ava would make the most of every moment, would leave her mark on the universe in ways that would be remembered for generations to come. She was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to explore and discover and grow, ready to show the galaxy what humanity was really made of, and to lead her species into a brighter future among the stars.